Algebra 2 practice final. We're on number 29 to do the second half of this first review sheet. Test will be tomorrow with the whole sheet in one day. 29 is probably the most important skill for this whole page, so make sure you're able to get these points in the right location. For 2-1, we're going to head right to, because the first number goes right or left, right is positive, and then up 1, because the second number goes up or down, up is positive. So negative 3, 1 goes left 3 and up 1. Negative 4, negative 1 would go left 4 but down 1. And then 5, negative 1 goes right 5 but down 1. 30, to see if something's a solution, you always plug it in. The 3 goes in for x, because the x is always in the ordered pairs first. The 4 goes in for y, and then you just check it out. 4 times 3 is 12, minus 5, that is not 4, so no. 31, the top of the instructions here in underlined bold say, get everything in slope-intercept form. That means the y is alone. That's just the best way for things to come to me or to you. So 31 is given to you in slope-intercept form, and that's great for graphing on 31. The minus 4 takes you down 4, and you make your first dot to graph that. Slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b is an equation we've memorized. The m is the slope. That's always the number next to the x. The y-intercept is the other number. That's why that's called slope-intercept form. Slopes, we also memorize the formula change in y over change in x. So for this question that we're doing now, the slope is 3, because that's the number with the x. If we write 3 as a fraction, that's 3 over 1. That's telling you that the y change is 3. In other words, go up 3, because the y goes up and down. And the x change is a 1. The x-axis goes right and left, so we're supposed to go right 1. So from here, go up 3 and right 1. Until you connect the dots with a line, and we're good on 31. 32, there was a thing called the vertical line test, that you imagine drawing vertical lines at a variety of locations. If you would touch twice through my graph with a vertical line, you would say no. That is not going to happen on 32, so you say yes. Every vertical line you could imagine to draw would only touch my graph one time. 33, when it's given to you an equation in function notation like this is expecting you to take numbers that are in parentheses later in the question and just put them in for x. Take 2 times stuff and subtract 5. So negative 1 is the first number you'll see later in the problem. So take 2 times negative 1 and subtract 5. Then take 2 times 0 and subtract 5. And then take 2 times 1 and subtract 5. The different numbers that I'm giving you in parentheses later in the problem in 33, they're just getting put in for x. 34, intercepts are special points where one number or the other is 0. So when I give you an equation like this and ask you for the intercepts, I'm expecting you to find 2 points where one or the other is 0. If the x is 0, that's the first number, is always the x. If the x is 0, I can basically cover the x up with my hand and solve the equation that I can still see, and that'll tell me y is 3. If the y is 0 and I cover this up with my hand, I need to replace that with a 0. And do some opposites to solve for x. Subtract the 12, divide by 2, I'd get negative 6 on that one. 35, we're doing slopes. So here's an alternative slope formula. This would be x number 1. This is y number 1. X's are first, y's are second. This is x2. This is y2. If you just obey this formula, it's telling you to do the 4 minus the 1. And it's telling you to do negative 2 minus 3. So that gets me 3 and negative 5. It doesn't matter if the negatives with the 3, the 5 are out in front, but it is a negative fraction. 36, you just need to know that y lines are horizontal, and those always have 0 slope. Okay, this is positive slope, uphill, negative slope, downhill. Y lines go horizontal, and those have 0 slope. X lines for 37 are always vertical, those have no slope. That is impossible. 38, usually when you're asked to write an equation, you use this item called the point slope form of an equation, which amounts to filling in these 3 blanks with an x that you're given, a slope that you're given, and a y that you're given. So on number 38, that 4 that I'm giving you goes here. The 3 that's in the parentheses goes there. The slope of 3 goes here. And then what you have to do is work on distributing and getting the y alone, because the directions said slope, intercept, formula, everything, so the y has to be alone. So distributing would be 3x minus 12. But then if you add the 3, that'll change that to be a negative 9. 39 is a similar question to this, that you have to find the slope. And it's a similar question then to this, that you have to write an equation. So we're going to go here 9 minus 5, which is 4. We're going to go 6 minus 4, which is 2. Simplifying that fraction would be a 2. Then I'm going to go y minus this 5 equals the 2 we just discovered, x minus the 4 that we knew at the beginning. Instead, if you wanted to use the 9 and the 6 from these, you could, but those numbers are bigger, so I don't want to. Again, distribute to get 2x minus 8, but do an opposite to get the y alone. If you add 5, the negative 8 will be a negative 3. 40 is easy money. The equation is y equals, so the slope is just a number next to the x, which is negative 2, and the intercept is just the other number, which is 6. 41 is easy money. You just need to do that process in reverse. Write y equals, write the slope, 2, next to the x, and then write down the other number at the end. 42, the rule for parallel is the slopes have to be the same and the intercepts be different. So 42 is a definite no. The slopes are with the x, the negative 2 and the negative 3, and they're not the same, and they're supposed to be. The 5s, or the intercepts, they're supposed to be different, but they're the same, so that's a wreck. That's no, 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 all the way no. 43, we're trying to write an equation, so we're back to this point slope equation, like this, inserting some numbers. But for this line, for us to be parallel to this line, we need to know the slope of this line. To know the slope of this line, we need the y to be alone. So to get the y alone, do an opposite. Since it's adding 2x, I'm going to leave the 12 out of there and subtract 2x. The slope is always the number with the x once the y is alone. And parallel, again, means that the slopes have to be the same. So the negative 2 goes in the slope position. Then I had a 1 for the x to go there, a 2 for the y to go there. And again, we're going to continue to have to get the y's alone. Distributing is negative 2x plus 2. Doing an opposite to get the y alone adds 2 on to 2, and that'll make that a 4 at the end. 45, the rule for slope is that for perpendicular, the rule for slope is they have to be negative reciprocals. So we need to judge slopes again. You can't judge slopes unless the y is alone. Every single problem you want to get the y alone. So if I try to get the y alone, I would subtract the 5x to do an opposite to get that out of there. And then I would divide by 7, and that's one of my slopes. For the other line, I would, let me see what this has. I'd leave the y's there again to try to get them alone. Get rid of the 7x by subtracting it. When I divide to get the y completely alone by negative 5, two negatives makes a positive. So this is positive 7/5. This is negative 5/7. That is a yes. That's the kind of slopes we're looking for on that. For 45, we're back to writing an equation. So writing an equation again, we're back to that point slope when we write equations. So I'm giving you a -3 for the x. So minus minus makes a +3 here. The 1 for the y goes there. The slope, we need to do some work to know the slope. I gave you an equation. You have to get every equation y equals, whether you're giving it to me or I'm giving it to you. So to get this y alone, we'd want to do a subtract opposite to get the 12x out of there. We would divide by 3. So this would show up as a -4 here as the slope with the x. For us to be perpendicular, we need the negative reciprocal. So if this is negative, I want to be positive. And since this is a 4 that's over 1, I need to flip that into a 1/4. And do what we've done on all those other ones. Distribute, so 1/4 x plus 3/4. To get the y alone, we add 1 onto 3/4, and that's going to be 7/4. Generally, that is like the worst page maybe of all the finals, because chapter 3 was long enough ago to be forgotten, but it was hard enough to still be hard. So you may need some work on that chapter 3 section to do well on that for the test. Chapter 4, even though it's harder stuff, it's more recent and it's stuff we've continued to use a little more. I think people have a little easier time on chapter 4. For 46, we're trying to solve graphically. The idea here is we'll make 2 lines that make an X, and we're going to look to see where they cross. I'm going to do the second line graphing first because it's easier. Since 4 and 2 go into 16, I can find intercepts. The intercepts, again, are these coordinates that have zeros involved. So with an x is 0, cover that up with your hand, y would be 8. If a y is 0, cover it with your hand, the x would be 4. 0, 8 is up 8. 4, 0 is right 4. This other equation's harder because that trick doesn't work. Even though 5 goes into 20, 3 doesn't, so that's a mess. So our backup plan is usually to get the y alone, but if we try to get the y alone, there's going to be fractions everywhere, and that's going to be a nuisance. So our backup plan is what we have to go to here, which is to get the x alone. Since it's adding 3y, we'd subtract 3y. Then since it's multiplying 5, I would divide by 5. And anytime we're in a graph predicament, we can always make a table. If it's x equals, we choose numbers for y. I would always choose 0. 0 times this is 0. 4 minus that is 4. Then we could pick anything else we want for y. I would choose 5, because 3/5 times 5 cancels the 5s, leaves a 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. And then I'd either pick 10 or I'd pick -5. Picking 10 cancels 5 to leave a 2. To multiply the 3 is 6. 4 minus 6 is -2. If you plot those points, 4 zeros here again. 1, 5 is there. -2, 10 would be up here somewhere. So if we play connect the dots on those, you would get a touch right here at the 4, 0 location is what we'd be after. 47, we just did the substitution method in chapter 10, so this should be feeling kind of fresh. We get any of these variables alone. This x is the loneliest. Since it's adding 5y, I'd subtract 5y, and that's my circle friend. I would put that in for the x. So 5 distributes this. Still plus 6y, still equals -17. That should have you on a road to eventually figure out that the y will be -2. And if you can get the y to be -2 figured out, and the details are on the key that I sent you, Negative 2 plugs into the circle zone. Negative 5 times negative 2 is 10. Negative 11 adds 10. That's the negative 1 more in the answer. 48, addition method, we want to have opposites so we can add the problems together. These aren't opposites, so we could force them to be. These aren't opposites, so we could force them to be. The way I did it on my paper, I went after these because at least their signs were different. With 3 and 4, I multiplied 3's problem by 4, and I multiplied 4's problem by 3. That created two entirely new problems that are on the key for the details, and then add those up. Adding those up should get you an x of 2 when you solve, and then you could put that 2 into either of these problems for x to get the y's, and it's up to you which way you go. I chose the top equation, and the details are on the paper. 49, we have pens and pencils and costs and things, so we need to write our own story. On my paper I did X and Y. On the board I'll do P for pens and C for pencils. But the pen plus pencil count is 100. If we involve the money, 25 for pens plus 15 for pencils is 2,100. To solve that, you could do the substitution method. I'm more of a fan of the addition method. To create opposites, I think the best way to create opposites is on that first row to create negative 15s, because that's smaller than if I use negative 25s. So I multiplied that by negative 15s, and that let me add the equations together and let me figure out that there were 50 of the pencils. And if you know there's 50 pencils, there have to be 50 pens, because there were 100 total items. 50, start at the bottom and work up. The bottom equation is telling you that z is 3 if you do an opposite. If you put that 3 into the middle row, it would look like 4y plus 15 equals 23. And that could get you the y of 2. If you put that into the top row, once you know y and z in the top row, that could get you the x. And again, details on the paper. 51, I would just look for what's missing on each line. So like the middle line is missing the z, there's a gap where the z would be, and it got 9 instead of 12. So if you subtract 12 minus 9, that reveals that the z is 3. The bottom level is missing the x, and instead of 12 you got 7. So subtract 12 minus 7 is 5, so the x is 5. And once you know x is 5 and z is 3, any equation could give you the y. 52, you make your own equation like that. We have ABC getting you 60. You have A and B giving you 40. You have B and C giving you 30 just from the sentences. This missing number here, from 60 down to 40, if you subtract, tells you C is 20. This missing gap for an A there, if you do 60 minus 30, tells you that the A is 30. And then any of the equations could give you B. 20 and 30 is 50 so far. To get 60 total, the B had to be a 10. Then a couple quick graphs. For 53, a y of negative 2 goes down 2. And it's a dotted line, and then we shade underneath because of the less than. 54, I go down 4 to make my first dot. With a slope of 2, I'm up 2 and right 1. I do a solid line this time because there was an equal sign, and I go above it. For the last graph, I don't have a number, so I use the origin. The slope's the invisible 1, so up 1 over 1. A dotted line that I'll want to be under in a second. For the other equation, up 2, a slope of negative 1 is down 1, right 1, to do another dotted line, and I want to be above that. So under 1 and above the other would be that area. So hope that's enough. Test tomorrow in one big portion for you. If you need more help, email me and we'll work it out.